participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. All right, members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Amy Pretsky.
Here.
Rick Leaf.
Here.
Julianne Hirsch.
Here.
Millie Milton. You're muted, Millie.
Here.
Adrian Cost.
Here.
Jean Kennedy.
Here.
John Campbell.
Here.
Here.
And I think that's all of us for today. All right. So I just apologize for the noise here. So since John Kadir hasn't joined us yet, I think it would make sense to see if anybody has any comments on the minutes that were sent around from last meeting. If there's no comment or correction, does anybody want to make a motion to approve the minutes from our last
I
meeting?
move that we accept the minutes as submitted.
A second.
All right. I think we need a roll call vote, so I'll go through again. Amy Pretsky,
Aye.
Rick Lee,
Aye.
Julianne Hirsch,
Aye.
Millie Milton,
Aye.
Jean Kennedy,
Aye.
John Campbell,
Aye.
Fran Backstrom,
Aye.
all right. Oh, and Adrian. She left, she's back.
Yeah, she was disconnected, but she's back now.
All right. Adrian just did a roll call vote to approve the minutes from last meeting. Do you approve? Yay or nay, Adrian?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, I'll just go right into updates that we got from various members. I can share my screen. I have just updated the implementation tool. So I'll show you guys what we've got thus far. So the idea is that this is going to be in a location where we can all access it and edit it going forward, but that hasn't been organized yet. So right now it's just in a document that I've got in my possession. I think it was sent around at the beginning to everyone, but you know, if we're all working on it individually, it doesn't really help us. So right now I've got all the updates from everyone, and so I can kind of go through what we've got. There was an update. Sorry about that. There was an update from planning on LU 1-6 about the stormwater management bylaw, and that has been completed. So there's one. There was an update from the Open Space Committee about exploring opportunities for walking paths along brooks and rivers connecting historic properties. And the idea is that this is in progress. They cited the CPA application for the Aqueduct Bridge and the work on the Aqueduct Bridge, as well as some of the future ideas about work on the Aqueduct Trail. I think this is probably one item that will come up in the downtown planning as well, and kind of improving connections downtown among historic buildings and waterways. There's another update from the Open Space Committee, building greater awareness of Chapter 61A programs in progress. The Open Space Committee does regularly reach out to Chapter 61A landowners that own key parcels. So perhaps some, you know, more awareness around Chapter 61A, but they are continuing to reach out to landowners of Chapter 61A parcels. There was another update from planning on developing regulations for hazardous waste facilities to protect the town. That has been completed. So the bylaw was written and passed at town meeting.
Which item was that, Ashley?
Yeah, that was LU 3-4.
Okay.
And then another update from Open Space Committee on NCH 1-1, which was continue to explore adding permanent protections to all town-owned spaces. That there is a yearly review by the Open Space Committee and continuing outreach to landowners of key parcels. So beyond just town-owned spaces, privately owned spaces as well. And there was an update I didn't receive directly from Historic, but from another person, that historic preservation plan has been created for the town. That's item NCH 2-1. So I've marked that as completed, but I can't remember if anybody, oh, Millie, you were the liaison to the historic committee. Is that accurate? Can I mark that
Yeah,
as
it's
completed?
about 75% complete.
Okay. All right, let's put that in. All right. There were a couple more updates. So from planning and Board of Selectmen, I got a bit of an update, and I think John is going to go into this today. But identify NCH 3-1, identify short and long-term planning goals for properties such as White Cliffs, Westboro State Hospital, 13 Church Street, Boundary Street, and 4 West Main, the Old Town Hall. The update was that the White Cliffs Committee is going to start meeting again soon. For Westboro State Hospital, although there are 300 acres in Northborough, there are probably only about 3 that are even up for possible purchase. And let's see, 13 Church, the old fire station, RFQ has been written and is under review with staff at this time. I thought there was an update on the Old Town Hall as well. I think somebody said that should be coming back to the town in 2022.
Yeah, I
but
can
think
speak to that, Ashley,
John
when we
will.
get to it.
Okay, so John will give us an update on that. On H2-3, update from planning that that's in progress. So build awareness around accessory dwelling units. An accessory dwelling unit bylaw was updated to add those in by right in all residential districts. So maybe just some outreach around that is needed at this time. ED 1-5, explore repurposing Old Town Hall as an anchor for downtown. So that's in progress. So there's the update there, but John will go into it further, that it will likely be purchased by the town in 2022 and feasibility study conducted after it's in control of the town. We have a few open space and rec updates. OSR 1-2, consider the development of a town dog park. There is a CPC application out right now for a feasibility study on that. So that's going to be moving forward, hopefully. OSR 2-1, strengthening trail connections among various trail networks, as well as to key open space and community centers. This is in progress. Trails Committee has the project for an accessible trail around the senior center and connection to the Edmund Hill area. So that's some of the work they're doing. They continue to do work with the Aqueduct Trail. They have opened with the Aqueduct Bridge, but there's always room for increased connections. I'm sure that'll be something discussed with the downtown project as well. Increased public access, OSR 2-2, increased public access to riverfront and water-based recreation opportunities. The Trails Committee maintains several current trails along waterfronts and are discussing efforts to add signs or list on maps. OSR 3-1, centralizing information on recreation resources and opportunities for public access. Parks and Rec said they are interested in doing this and invested in working toward this. They're currently using a combination of things, but would like to centralize this information. So that's not yet started, but something they're interested in. Another one is promoting one main community calendar that includes all town-sponsored events, not just recreation-related events. Again, the Recreation Office is in full support, but they need to figure out who would actually be running that, if not Ally. OSR 4-1, identify acquisition opportunities for parcels that provide or can provide key linkages among open spaces. As noted earlier, the Open Space Committee does look at projects like this annually, reviewing the map of the town. OSR 4-2, integrate enhanced signage, visibility, and walkability at the town's recreation facility and trailheads into overall open space and recreation network improvements. Per the Recreation Department, signage improvements are being made at trailheads throughout town, and per the Open Space Committee, we often utilize Eagle Scouts for sign projects, such as the trail at Assabet Park. So there is signage currently in town. Maybe a more unified effort is needed, but it's underway. OSR 4-3, identify opportunities to repurpose old infrastructure for trails development, such as the old trolley line and the Northborough Aqueduct Bridge. This is obviously in progress. There is a CBA application for the Aqueduct Bridge work. The Aqueduct Trail has been open to the public, and that line, as well as the trolley line, are up for discussion about a multi-use trail in the future. OSR 4-4, ensure adequate preservation funding is available for open space acquisitions as opportunities arise. This is ongoing and in progress. The Open Space Committee applies for funding to the Conservation Fund annually from CPC. There are just a couple more. PFS 3-1, leveraging the town's green community designation to obtain financial and technical support from the state to perform additional energy-related initiatives and consider the creation of a sustainability committee. So it looks like the town has leveraged the green community designation to obtain financial and technical support from the state. It's not clear to me from the update to what level in moving forward energy-related initiatives.
I can speak to
Well,
that, Madam Chair.
it's part of my update. I'll get to it, Scott.
Okay.
No
All right,
worries.
so John will update that as well. Participate in the state's T1-2, participate in the state's Complete Street Program to improve bikeability and walkability of local streets. I think Scott will probably talk about that, if not John. T1-3, examine and identify key locations for town for additional sidewalk improvements, focusing on pedestrian-oriented destinations. So Scott touched on that last time, as did John, and I assume if any update is needed, that will be there. So that's all the updates I received from all of the members. So if anybody has any additional updates, definitely send them along, and hopefully soon we'll have this up in a central location so that we can all work on it and update it in real time without it having to go through me. I'm going to stop sharing now, and I think John, now you're up and you can provide your updates.
Sure, thank you. Let me see if I can make sure I have screen sharing capabilities, if that's all right. So I will. All right. Can everybody see that? So I know I will send this out to you. We was experiencing a little technical difficulties tonight, so I was having a little trouble logging in. But what I've done is, and I'll send this memo to you guys following the meeting. I know, Ashley, you had asked me to update the spreadsheet, but that came a little bit late. So I'll work with Scott and you, and we'll load this stuff in so we can get everything into one format where everybody can follow. But so this is not exhaustive. There are still more projects and smaller initiatives that we would need to go in and follow up on. But I'm just going to hit the high points. There's about a dozen or so of projects just to update you. One that you just mentioned was kind of the status of the green community designation. So green communities, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, it's a state program and basically provides financial and technical support. So we pledge to cut our municipal energy use by 20% over 5 years. We pledge to reduce the life cycle costs for our buildings, provide as of right siting for renewable energy and alternative facilities, expedited permitting, and have a purchasing policy for fuel assisted vehicles. So that's sort of the context. Now, where are we on this project? So we were provided an initial award in fiscal 19 of $145,000. We did some energy work, several schools, the police station. Following those projects that were completed in fall of 2020, our energy use is down by 1.3%, and our fuel energy use is down about 15%. So that was the first round of grants. Now that's more of a given, that first round. Moving beyond that, they're competitive grants, so you're not guaranteed to get anything. So we were awarded in 2021 a competitive community grant award of $161,000. We obviously requested significantly more, but unfortunately, again, it was competitive. They reduced our request down. So that's being used for projects that are happening right now that our facilities manager and Scott are overseeing. We got heat pump upgrades at the Melican Middle School. We're doing weatherization work at all of the schools except for the high school. So Melican, Lincoln, Peasley, Z, and Proctor. These are things that have very fast paybacks for us. There's lighting improvements, police station, highway garage, and we're going to be purchasing our first hybrid vehicle for the police department. Now, the next round, we were trying to get this done for this upcoming round, but unfortunately, we were being held up by National Grid. But we are going to be in the next round of application applying for purchase of our streetlights. And that will be a very significant energy savings for us. So we would purchase them from National Grid, we convert them all to LEDs, and then we'd be responsible moving forward for the maintenance. So Green Communities is just a annual rolling grant program. So we will continue to work down as part of the initial application and award to become a Green Communities awardee. We basically had to lay out what is our initial plan to get to that 20% reduction. And so we're working through those projects in a priority order with the most bang for our buck. We're also trying to get projects that are most likely to be funded because they don't like everything equally. So we work with the CMRPC. It's a lot of reporting. In fact, I just signed off on the last fiscal year's reporting. So it's a lot of administrative overhead. The good thing now is with our new facilities manager is that Sean Thompson is able to really get, once we get the funding for the projects, he's able to see these things get implemented. So this is going to be a continuing effort for us. But the next round that we're looking at, we're hopefully going to be looking at a significant street light acquisition and conversion, which I think will be fantastic for the town. So now I'm going to move into some of the building updates. So the fire station, as I'm sure you're all aware, we did complete a feasibility study. It was determined that the station could not fit its programmatic needs on the current site. That's 11 Pierce Street. So the committee recommended acquisition of or seeking out new land. So after issuing a request for proposals and really going through a very exhaustive list and looking at every parcel in town, essentially, the committee squared up on 6165 West Main Street. This is the old Pierce gas station across the street from Dunkin' Donuts. So we worked through a purchase and sale. So that parcel is under agreement. And in accordance with the purchase and sale, the owner had to remove all structures and provide us with a clean site. We did our due diligence, a lot of concern. It's a former gas station. Supposedly it was clean. Bottom line is there is contamination when they removed the final building, the garage down by the road. There was contamination and some significant contamination. So we've been working through that with the seller. That's the delay in that project. We are at the point now where that project is getting ready to move forward. They have a remediation plan. We have come to terms and agreements in terms of how it's going to work out. And so the next step for us is to issue a request for qualifications for an owner's project manager, and then following that, issue an RFQ for designer services. So that OPM, the owner's project manager RFP, has been sitting on my desk for months and months and months. It's ready to go. We just couldn't start that process until we knew whether or not the owner was in fact going to be able to clean up the property. I'll just share with you the big issue with that, and the major delay there is we needed to make sure that the contamination hadn't moved into the groundwater. If it's in the soil, it's a fairly straightforward remediation. If it moved into the groundwater, that would delay things significantly. So we weren't going to close on the property until we had that information. So we're pretty confident now. And by the way, we have our own LSP that is basically overseeing this for us, making sure that our interests are being represented. So I'm hopeful in the next, in December, that we'll be issuing that OPM RFQ, and that process will get up and running again. Next, and let, as in,
Before you move, before you move on from that one, John, just a
Yeah.
question.
Go ahead, Rick, through the chair.
So I'm trying to pair up which recommendation of the master plan that goes to. Does that go to?
You know what might be helpful, Rick, is if I go through this and then I'll work with Ashley and we'll get these things logged in where they should go, slotted in, rather than to try to do it in real time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it could fall under a couple, but it's more like
Yeah.
it's more like a side thing, because the master plan kind of talks about reuse of old buildings. So this is a new,
Well,
it's a
it
new
does.
project, right? So it
Yeah,
kind of-
but it does beg the question, and so as soon as we are moving out of this, it brings the old fire station on 11 Pierce Street into play.
yeah.
And so that is something that we are contemplating how best to assess the reuse of that property. But again, until we can move out, that's the sequencing of these types of things. Right.
Okay,
And Rick will work to get this in. There's a lot of smaller projects that I'm not going to spend time on tonight, but we'll log them in so people can kind of see where they are. These are sort of the big ones that I think most people are interested in hearing about. But of
Right.
course, I'm happy to speak about anything you guys want to. So next big one is the reuse of White Cliffs. So in last fiscal year, we completed phase 3 of the feasibility and reuse study. Very lengthy process, a lot of great documentation. The finished product of that entire reuse study is up on the website. If anybody wants to see it, has got a lot of terrific information. But under the third phase that we completed most recently, that was looking at potential scenarios for reuse. And the committee narrowed it down to 3 primary areas: reuse as event space, municipal offices, or a residential use. Unfortunately, when we went through the pro formas, the financial models showed that it's tough. It's very, very expensive and would require multiple millions of dollars of additional subsidy by the town. After kind of digesting that, the committee circled back and they asked the consultants to say, well, what would it look like if we did something that we referred to as a preservation light option, which is not to restore White Cliffs to its complete former glory, but to preserve the main components, the streetscape, and the key things that I think most people associate with that facility. So even that is going to be a very significant cost. And so where we are right now is we want to look at issuing an RFP to try to find a private sector partner who will come in and work with the town to bring that facility back online. That is a much more complicated and difficult project, as you can imagine. I'll just say this, for obvious reasons, to me, the developer could not get this to work, and they were planning to demolish the place, as you all know. So it really is, the numbers are making this extremely difficult to bring a project forward. So what we've been doing behind the scenes, I've been working with Norm Corbin and the chair. We've been trying to ferret out people who would be interested in possibly partnering with us. It's kind of like, think of it this way: if you're going out for a recruitment to hire somebody, and whatever that field is that you're hiring, there's nobody out there. You have to actually beat the bushes and do some legwork on the front end to encourage people to kind of come into that process. And so that's what we've been doing behind the scenes. And we think we have a few folks that would be interested in responding to that RFP. The second piece of it is, we're working with a consultant that it was a sub-consultant for the architect that did the feasibility study for us and the reuse study for us. And he's willing to work with us on that project, but his proposal is expensive and a little bit vague. And so the legwork that we're doing behind the scenes is to try to tighten this up. Last thing we want to do is put this out on the street, have either nobody respond or have people respond who are just are going to say, yeah, we'll redevelop it if the town will give us $10 million to do it. So but it's a struggle, but we're pushing this project. We're pushing it forward. I should mention in the interim, we have done buttoned up the building envelope. So we put a new roof on the place. We've buttoned it up so that the elements aren't getting in, trying to maintain the building envelope, as I said, so that we don't see further deterioration. We've sealed off some of the additions that were compromised that really are going to need to be removed. We've sealed them off in the interior to make sure that they're not continuing to allow the elements in and to impact the historic portion of the building. By all accounts, pretty much everybody's indicated in their assessment that those additions, it will need to be ripped off, and any sort of reuse in all likelihood will probably require an addition to be put on of some kind, because the historic structure itself doesn't lend itself to very many uses unless you're going to destroy the interior, which obviously we don't want to do. So we're anticipating getting Norm Corbin actually wants to meet next week with me to go over some of the folks that we've been able to reach out to. And we're going to try to get that up and going again, and then see if we can't get somebody who wants to come and partner with us. But it's got to be somebody who, again, this just going out in the private sector is going to result in proposals that are going to be asking the town for, upwards of, $10 million to subsidize that, which I don't think is the preferred route. So we're working. It's just slow.
Just a quick question. When the library remodel and update was so well done, how much did that cost, if you remember? I don't know how
Yeah,
long
the
ago it was
library,
done.
I believe we got a $2 million grant from the state, and then it was
Oh, wow.
another $7 million. So I think the total
Okay.
project cost was in the area of about 9 million, if memory serves me right. And that was a funny project because we had like all kinds of pockets of money all over the place for that one. And we sort of brought it all together. But you got to remember now that historic building, first of all, it's a granite exterior and a slate roof. So we didn't really do anything on the outside. We made sure we sealed up the roof, and the historic part of the building is actually very small. The biggest part of that was making sure that when we tore off the 1976 edition, that we preserved that outer wall building and did it in a sensitive way. So that, that's a very small historic building, and that was done about 10 years ago too. So the numbers that we saw from the pro forma on the various options, it was, between, 10 and $30 million. And so we just, if it was easy, the developer would have found it. So we're going to continue to keep pushing on that. The next
I have
one.
just one other comment is, I don't know. I know in Southborough, I can't remember what the house is called, the old stone house.
Yeah. I drove
know,
that the other day.
I mean, it's privately owned now, but somehow they got them to do, whatever they're doing while preserving the structure. And
that was one of our first stops, talking to that developer and that project. And as you can imagine, there are a lot of specifics to it. We've reached out and touched base with pretty much anybody that's had a similar project to ours. This is a big house. It's a big wood structure, and it's got a lot of janky additions to it that are gonna make it very hard to remodel.
I have two questions real quick on this. I don't want to delay anything. Do we have existing conditions, floor plans of everything on White Cliffs?
Yes, everything. We have all interior plans. The entire interior has been digitally scanned. We have models for everything. It's all up on.
And what were the uses that were contemplated?
There were three uses. It was, ironically, as an event space, potentially, as a municipal building in use, or as residential. And all of those options required either an addition or another building being sited there. Like the residential would be that the house would be sort of the clubhouse common space, and then it would require 4 buildings with a certain number of units in order to
Right.
make it viable.
That building seems really difficult because of the more than anything, the handicap access, because
Yes.
that's where all
And
the money.
again, yes, well, the code compliance is
Right.
the ADA compliance, but also fire suppression,
Yeah.
elevator. These are all things that come with, you know, $500,000 to $750,000 price tag.
Right,
So
and maybe I'll just, if it's possible, I'll take a peek at it. You know, I won't charge anything, but we've done a ton of this stuff. Just to see if maybe I
yeah,
can
well,
help.
again, it's all the entire analysis, everything is in the plan that's on the website, and I encourage everybody to look at it. And the
Perfect.
nice thing is that information, when we do talk to somebody, we're able to give them all the plans, all the information, so they have everything that they need to make an informed decision. Unfortunately, when they run the numbers, they have an informed decision, and the economics are very
Right.
difficult.
Are
They're
awful.
very
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, sure.
John, if I could just interject for a second.
Sure. Through the chair. I'm not running the meeting.
Yeah, basically, the main purpose of tonight's meeting was to get Donnie to take us through what we need to do to get ready for the scope of services for the RFP for the downtown master plan, which I think we need to start no later than 8 o'clock tonight. So if you can run through the rest of these pretty quickly, and I'd advise the rest of the committee, if we have any questions, just to maybe save them or bring them up at a future time after we get a chance to read this. But I think we need to sort of finish this up and get on to Donnie's.
Sure, Rick, you're giving me the hook already. That's okay. And I'll that's fine. And I'll move quickly through the balance of these. And then, like I said, I'll send it to you, and you can kind of see how it fits in, and we'll work together to see how it fits in. Town hall feasibility, we're drafting that now. That got delayed primarily due to COVID. But that feasibility study will looks at White Cliffs, whether or not to put a potential municipal town hall up there. Frankly, the numbers that we saw were like in the $30 million range. I don't know how much time we're going to spend looking at that. We'll look at reuse or renovation of 63 Main Street where we are. And then the big one is 4 West Main Street. So if we're not going to move town offices back to 4 West Main Street, then we'll have another discussion about how to best to reuse that property. But part of this will be an evaluation and assessment of that 4 West Main Street, and we'll know where we stand on that. Surplusing of the old fire station on Church Street. That RFP is, I think Ashley mentioned, it's drafted. The big thing we're waiting on that right now is to try to figure out what we want to put as a reserve on that property. The process that we're using is an RFP process, which means we're not trying to necessarily maximize how much we can get for it. We're trying to have someone come in and tell us how they're going to redevelop that in a historically and aesthetically sensitive manner, given it's one of the gateways to the community. So that's about ready to go out on the street. There's a number of things in here that talk about economic development and water and sewer capacity. The biggest issue that we're dealing with right now is that all of our sewer goes to the Marlborough Westerly Treatment Plant, and we are in litigation with Marlborough over that intermunicipal agreement. It expired. They were going to try to kick us out. Then they were going to take our sewer capacity, and then they still want to charge us 3 times what we pay now. So we spent the last year or so preparing. We went to court in September, and so we are waiting for the outcome of that, and that'll determine first and foremost what our capacity is, because that's going to impact our development plans moving forward. Traffic safety initiatives. We're spending a ton of time out on Bartlett Street. A lot of work has been done out there. $80,000 of mitigation work that we got through Amazon. I'm sure you're familiar with the safety zone, the crosswalks, and all of this stuff that's been done. Where this stands right now is Amazon has also funded a portion of a post-occupancy traffic study. So we most recently did a walking safety audit of that. The plan coming out of that will be probably next month, and they'll have suggestions for what, if anything else, we need to do out there. Again, in the vein, because I know this was something we talked about last week, of sidewalks and complete streets and all of that, and traffic. These are all things that are actively being worked on. So we did get a shared streets grant, $64,000, put rapid flashing beacons on a bunch of locations around our play fields and ball fields. The sidewalk master plan and complete streets, I'm not going to go through this because Scott spoke to it last time. This is what he said in writing, so you can kind of go through. Bottom line is we've completed a complete inventory of all of our sidewalks. And right now that number is about $4.8 million of backlog of repairs that need to be made into the sidewalks that we have right now. So we will be moving forward with the sidewalk master plan. As part of this, Scott spoke to it, but we are looking at one of the goals in the master plan, to complete streets. We're moving forward with that. That will be a potential source of grant funding for some sidewalk work as we move forward. Ashley mentioned the dog park. Just want to make you aware, we've done a lot of work on the dog park behind the scenes over a number of years. Right now, we're just trying to get some financial assistance so that we can do a real siting and conceptual design. You need some engineering work in order to see if things can fit, what it would cost, so we can come back again. Assabet Park is under construction right now, again, affecting one of our main playgrounds, and particularly for young children and ADA accessibility. That just factors in. Westboro State Hospital, you mentioned everybody got excited or concerned, depending on your perspective, when it was noted that there's 300 acres of Westboro State Hospital property and what was going to happen with that. To just reiterate what Ashley covered is that property is mostly fish and wildlife. That's not going anywhere. Unlike Westboro, we don't have much. It's a little tiny triangle. Some other potential property out there, you may not be aware of this, but where the old Chauncey Hall is right now, that is being raised, and they're going to be putting another state facility, a maintenance facility on that site. But all those old triple deckers and the old Capitol plant, the old piggery farms and stuff down there, all those structures are being removed and will be cleaned up. But as far as Northborough's opportunity to acquire that land and do something with it, we're looking at this tiny little triangle that's sloped with no parking, and the state isn't interested in selling it to us at this point, even if we wanted to. So it's something we can look at, but I don't know that it's a huge priority. And then last but not least, sprinkled throughout all of this are things about connectivity, how do we get more user-friendly documents out and so forth. So we have engaged a firm right now, and we are in the process of doing an IT GIS master strategic plan, as well as a cybersecurity assessment. So we're going to be going through looking at our website, and one of the components of that is not just our website, but our technology. But one component is interactability, and again, how do we best push out information to residents. So that's it. Again, it's not meant to be a comprehensive update, even though Rick tried to hook me off right out of the gate. But these are the big projects, guys, that, you think about where the staff time is going. These projects are consuming a lot of our discretionary. And we have day-to-day things that we need to do. Then we have these big initiatives. That's a dozen of the big initiatives that we're working on that I think we have to figure out, to Rick's point, how they fit in and they trickle through, because some of them might land in a number of places. So that will be the next exercise, to get these, and then some of the smaller ones that I didn't bother getting into. There's probably another dozen smaller projects and things pertaining to these goals and objectives that we'll have to update into the format. So I appreciate your indulgence, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions anybody may have.
Yeah, I think we have about 10 minutes before Donnie and Phil. We're up on the agenda, so if anybody has any questions.
See, Rick, I had
you have
10 more
time.
minutes and you were hooking me right out of the gate.
You did a really good
Always
job.
good to have more time. For
Usually I'm trying to
discussion.
get Rick to stop talking.
I just got panicky when we decided we were going to spend the rest of the night talking about the White Cliffs, which isn't the point.
Yes, thank you, Rick, for keeping us on track. I had lots of questions.
Yeah, and really on a number of these, particularly White Cliffs, all of that information is up on the full complete reports there. And I would direct you there first, and then I could certainly answer any questions offline if people have them.
Julianne?
Yeah, I have a question, and it went back to the green communities section.
Yep.
You mentioned replacing streetlights. Are you replacing the lamps or just the bulbs?
Well, it's the fixture. So National Grid owns the lights and the poles. And so what happens is we wind up basically renting them or paying for them on an annual basis. And so we have the ability to purchase the light fixtures, and they would swap out the light fixtures to new fixtures. And again, we'd have to see if it's more than just the bulb, but I don't know if it's the whole arm. But the bottom line is they will sell them to us. We purchase them, we retrofit them to be energy efficient, and then the goal here is on an annual basis, our costs could be half or even less than that for electric costs. And if we can get Green Communities grant funding to help us do that, then the capital costs on the front end, a good amount of that will be taken care of. And so then on an operational, from an operational standpoint, we then need to contract with a firm to do the, if a bulb is out, to do the maintenance and the upkeep. So it becomes more ongoing administrative work for us, but it could, I mean, our bill is somewhere in the, $125,000, $130,000 range. A couple communities have done this. Becca in my office, the assistant town administrator, has familiarity with that program. That the reason why we wanted to actually move forward with that in this last round, the reason why we didn't is because National Grid was unable to give us the data in a timely enough fashion for us to meet the grant deadline. So that's why we pivoted and did some of these other weatherization projects. But this will be the next round.
Well, at
Amy?
this,
Oh.
can I just
Sure.
finish up?
Go
So
ahead, Julian.
I've heard this committee mention that, more consistently appearing lampposts might be a nice addition to the downtown area. So if that's a possibility moving forward.
Well, I think I think maybe what you're thinking about is a different project, which would be a utility suppression project and putting decorative street lights in there. But that's something we can look at. And well, not the suppression. That's very expensive. I did that in another town. But we could look at potentially designating an area for some different style of street light. Something we could certainly look at. Yeah, we can do that.
Amy?
My question was about the fire station, and along the same line as Julianne talking about the lampposts, is the next step is probably, you talked about it's going out for design. So, or a manager, there's RFQ coming. Will there be a design committee? Because I know like the fire station will have to go through design review and through site plan. So it'd be great to keep people involved in the process from the beginning.
Yeah, it would be a building committee that would take it through, just like we did for the library, the senior center, Lincoln Street, and what we did for the feasibility study portion of the fire station project. So it'll be a building committee. We hire the OPM, we hire the designer, and then we start working through the design options. And at appropriate intervals, just like we did at all these other projects, would be opportunities for public input and comment. I know you want it to be really pretty, Amy, so we'll work on that for you.
Well, it's going to be a big part of the downtown
I just don't want it to cost.
revitalization,
So it's always a balance, the aesthetics and functionality. The functionality is first and foremost, and then see what we can do for the aesthetics. Obviously, we want a nice looking building, but fire stations are running about over $600 a square foot. And so we're looking at a $20 million project potentially here. So we just need to be cost sensitive in addition to aesthetically sensitive. So, but there'll be plenty of opportunities for public comment.
I guess in a larger sense, John, my question would be between, the old town hall and the fire station that we're moving out of now into the new fire station and the fire station that predated that one, those buildings all are going to fall probably within the footprint of the downtown study. And so is it possible that decisions made about those buildings will happen cooperatively as the study goes along and things are suggested as possibilities for the revitalization of the downtown that may have ideas about the use of those buildings, will you be able to sort of time decision-making so that everything sort of comes together? Or are decisions going to be made about some of these buildings separate from where the master plan study may go?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rick. I think the old fire station at 13 Church Street is moving forward for surplusing. And the beauty of that is the process that we're using and the evaluation criteria is basically the master plan. So in terms of selecting the successful proposer, we're really looking at the criteria of the master plan of what we've said we want to see there. But that project would move forward. That one is ready to go out the door in a matter of a couple of weeks. The building of the new fire station is going to move on that schedule, but the old fire station at 11 Pierce Street, I think the timing of that would probably coincide more with the downtown master plan, and it could be taken into consideration in terms of how that building is best reused. And I think we would want a lot of input in terms of how it's best reused. I always thought that it might make a nice community center. If you think about the old bays, you could fit basketball, pickleball courts in there. It has, or a brewery, make a nice brewery, big open area. So that's exciting. One's a municipal use. One is, again, you'd go out through an RFP process, but I think that one would take a lot more community input, discussion about how best to reuse that structure. And I think that would coincide with the downtown master plan, assuming we can get moving sooner rather than later on that project, the master plan project for the downtown.
Certainly that's, I think, the goal of this committee is to get that downtown.
And I heard that loud and clear, so I'm working on that. So as soon as we get a sense of where it is we want to go, my job is to find out how we're going to finance it and get it moving on a fast track. That's the plan.
All right, well, that's a good segue. Unless anybody else has any questions, we can turn the floor over to Donnie and Phil to start the discussion on the downtown plan scope.
Sure. Thank you, Ashley. Pleasure to be here once again. So let me just go ahead and share my screen, because I do have a brief PowerPoint presentation that will frame the conversation this evening. And then what I want to do is just give a couple of examples of downtown visioning plans or master plans, strategic plans, economic assessments. These things come in various formats. But I do have my colleague Phil Goff on the phone with me as well. He comes to the planning realm from a more transportation-oriented perspective, and I know that Route 20 is a big component of the downtown. So I wanted to get his opinion on some of this stuff as well. So why don't we go through it, the slide deck. What I want to showcase is the general basic planning process, and that really starts with a look at the overview of the existing conditions and vision, definition of a study area, summary of existing conditions, some technical analyses, some visioning exercises and goal setting and recommendation prioritization process, and then a strategy for implementation. So those of you that were on the master plan committee, steering committee, this kind of could look very similar. Everything is just downscaled, and it gets a little bit more specific as you're looking at a specific neighborhood, specific area of a community. Those technical analyses I'll be getting into in just a second, but all of it is really done with a lot of public outreach and engagement. So those technical analyses, again, if you were working on the master plan steering committee, or you've been, brushing up on all of the different elements of a master plan as part of this committee, you'll understand that, there's a land use and then a development component, there's a transportation component, economic development component. So there's some technical analyses that need to get brought into a plan like this. And like I said, it's downscaled and made more specific for the downtown area because of its condensed geographic area. So typical things we might do for a land use analysis is looking at the parcels, breaking it down. What are the uses? What is the zoning? What are the zoning restrictions that may or may not allow for what the vision is calling for? Streetscape and placemaking, thinking about those things, looking at the municipal properties and the inventory of those properties within the study area, looking at open spaces and recreation opportunities, and for transportation, thinking about traffic and parking, the connectivity for all types of users and the safety for those users, making and looking at transit advancements and TOD opportunities. And there's not going to be a lot of TOD opportunities in downtown Northborough, and I'm not going to say that there are, but just taking a look at what those opportunities might be. And TOD stands for transit-oriented development. So there's not a lot of transit, in this area, but is there an opportunity to introduce transit? Is there an opportunity to capitalize on that transit for additional development and for additional activity? Economic opportunities, we look at demographics, population, and housing. We look at the mix of businesses and employers. We do an assessment to see, really a very basic market assessment of, what's, on the ground now and what could potentially come down the line. And I'll get to in a second that, one of the additional scope items that might be included and is typically included in a downtown plan is a market analysis. What is the area ripe for in terms of different types of uses and different types of economic activity. And then of course, I don't approach any planning projects these days without looking at sustainability and resilience. So we just talked about the green communities designation and the grant funding that's available through that. There's the municipal vulnerability preparedness program that I believe that Northborough has been participating in, and there's the planning grant program that I think you've already undergone, but there's also an action grant program that will fund some of those priority projects that have come out of that program. And there may be synergies that we want to look at, but we definitely want to look at that planning report, and we would want to see, what are the stressors, what are the vulnerabilities related to those climate stressors? Is it, heat, extreme heat? Is it flooding? Is it something else? And how do we, incorporate that into the plan for the downtown? But I lumped a few other things under the sustainability and resilience section, water resources, habitat protection, agricultural resources, not relevant for the downtown, just putting up here for the sake of conversation. Energy use and cost, and focusing on greenhouse gas emissions. So the state has placed a lot of emphasis on reducing greenhouse gas emissions through energy reduction, but through other means as well. One of the things that you could look for is, the way that traffic moves around the downtown. Is there congestion? And I know that there is. There's there's some, there's a lot of traffic, volumes that run through this area, thinking about not just the vehicle miles traveled, but the vehicle hours traveled, meaning, how long are the cars staying on the road and how long are they staying on the road in that general area. And you can potentially look at that. Some of that may require a more detailed traffic analysis, but from a GHG perspective, that's something that you want to consider. Green infrastructure, some of the nature-based solutions that the Executive Office of Energy and Environment is looking at through the MVP program is really based on nature, those solutions that are not gray, not hard infrastructure, but are green, like green infrastructure and low impact development, using bioswales, using rain gardens, increasing permeable spaces for infiltration, so that you reduce the opportunity for storms and things of that nature to cause flooding and cause problems, and help with stormwater management at the same time. And then overall climate adaptation and preparedness. What are you going to be implementing in the downtown to address these vulnerabilities that the changing climate is presenting to you? So that's generally the overview of what a typical plan looks at, and I dove into a little bit of the technical analyses that would be incorporated, but some of the additional technical services, which is really what is going to be driving the conversation on what this downtown master plan and the scope of this downtown master plan, or plan would include. So we didn't want to go and run off and create a draft scope for you that may or may not have included what you want or what you need. Really, to have this conversation is a good starting point, in my opinion, because we can then sort of figure out what's relevant and what's not relevant. And I'm already hearing that there's a reuse study that needs to be done, and it could be incorporated into the plan. So all of that is good conversation. But some of the additional technical services are listed here. Looking at a real estate analysis, so looking at the building footprint, the types of uses, the square footage, the availability of vacancies, what kind of spaces these are, and that would be part of a typical real estate analysis. Market opportunities analysis, I touched upon. What is how many people are within a certain area of the downtown? What does that mean for the retail environment, the entertainment, the restaurant, and markets? What level of attraction could those types of uses bring, and what other opportunities are present, or could be advantageous for the downtown to attract that vibrancy and attract that activity? Is it retail? Is it office? That kind of thing this kind of analysis is typically included in a downtown plan, because it does sort of counterbalance the vision, because many people may want a certain type of use or a certain type of activity, and if the market opportunity analysis is saying, well, it's a slightly different story, then we might have to modify the overall land use plan that gets incorporated into the downtown plan. Parking utilization. Sometimes parking utilization studies have been recently done and incorporated into a plan like this. Other times they are conducted as part of this type of study. Looking at infrastructure, utilities, that may be something that is necessary as part of this project as well. But sometimes they're addressed at a high level. Urban design concept planning. So such downtown plans typically include some some mapping, like many planning projects, but they take the vision and they sort of place it on top of an aerial, or place it on top of some sort of geographic representation of the downtown that demonstrates and shows what the vision is really how would it manifest itself. And sometimes it's a simple 2D image, sometimes it's renderings. It depends on how far you want to take the visualizations. Sometimes those visuals are presented to the public for feedback. Sometimes there's a visual preference study that's done. We talked a little bit about this during the steering committee process for the master plan. The urban design concept, that could really take take the form of various levels of involvement or complexity. Some of these plans look at design guidelines and standards, branding guidelines, thinking about the economic aspects and the market opportunities and uniting the two. Wayfinding signage is often a problem in some areas, so we typically sometimes include wayfinding signage program design. Conceptual roadway design is something that Phil is somewhat familiar with, but is oftentimes given to our transportation planners. But that it really looks at okay, well, what is the reconfiguration of these areas? Where do crosswalks need to go? Where do the bump outs need to go if you're going to be looking to preserve or lower speed limits? Thinking about Mass DOT standards, thinking about federal standards as well. Really taking that roadway design and traffic study analysis and taking it to the next level, and not something that wouldn't be included in sort of a base plan. Thinking about affordable housing as well is something that we often look at as part of master plans such as this. But and I know that Rick, you might have something to say on that, but affordable housing is and was an issue during the master planning process, and as it is for many Massachusetts towns. So incorporating that as part of a focus area is something that could potentially be an additional technical service Some things that are not listed here may be, thinking about healthy community design and what that might look like, what indicators are relevant to Northborough, and how would, a reimagining of the downtown promote a healthy community through active, active living and safety, and reducing air quality, things of that nature. And then one of the master plans that I'll show you has a reuse study that was baked in to the project. And we'll get into that in just a second, but that may be another technical service that gets incorporated into a plan like this. I think that was pretty much what I wanted to share this evening. From
Can
a
I just mention one quick thing, Donnie?
Yep.
Yeah, just doubling
Is that
back to
Dario?
just doubling back
Oh,
to the
Phil?
yeah. Can you
Oh,
hear me?
sorry. Yep, go ahead. Yep.
I just wanted to double back quickly to that conceptual roadway design that you spoke very eloquently about. But one thing just to add to that is, frequently in scopes of work for these kind of downtown studies or neighborhood studies, what have you, we would include conceptual roadway design for up to one project, up to two, up to three projects of, various lengths. And we would have, some level of prioritization methodology that we would look at the different roadways in which improvements are being targeted, do the prioritization, and then whichever one, two, or three seems to score the highest, we might do some conceptual roadway design. So that's usually where those come out of. So I just wanted to add that in.
Thanks, Phil.
Mhm.
So I'm going to go ahead and just show a couple of examples of master plans, two of which we've done at VHB, and then others are presented for other communities. I shared this with Ashley and Rick a few days ago. This is the downtown vision and tunnel assessment for Lebanon, New Hampshire. Now, this particular project as the name implies, includes a tunnel assessment. There's an engineering report done for a tunnel that is present and extant in downtown Lebanon, and they wanted to reimagine its use and reactivate it as a key piece of infrastructure within their downtown. So that was incorporated as part of this vision plan. But I will say that significantly ramped up the cost of a plan such as this. So an engineering report, and an assessment and visioning study specifically for a tunnel, concept designs for the tunnel, that was something that ramped up the cost for this particular project. But right off the bat, you could see that there is some urban design aspects, conceptualization of the downtown, what that might look like, really taking an understanding of what the vision is, and thinking about visual preference studies, thinking about what the massing might look like, the form of the building, the interaction with the street, where the entrances might go, the fenestration, all of that is sort of represented here in this concept plan, along with, the enhanced landscaping and use of public spaces and creation of public spaces. That was part of this urban design concept planning. So it's always really helpful to start with the table of the contents. You start with the existing conditions, you do the market analysis, you have some public involvement, you create the plan, and you develop some implementation strategies. And that plan is really the recommendations that came out of the public involvement plan and the analyses that were included herein. The engineering report, as I mentioned, is an appendix, the market analysis. There was also a traffic assessment that was done. There was a branding guide included as part of this project, and there is some design guide strategies that were also looked at for this particular project. But just a couple of overviews of additional overview of this particular plan. This was a study area design or study area identification. Here, we identified where the downtown or where this, geographic area of focus for this study was going to be. And, for Northborough, you would have to do something very similar. You would have to define the study area, understand what the downtown is, and have people recognize what the downtown is based on that new boundary. Again, here's that conceptualization, potential new development, public realm, parking, greenway and open space area, and there's a river trail that was actually developed as part of this as well. So really taking some ideas and again, just translating it into a visual. And I think, Rick, there was one image, and I think this was it as well. So this is the urban design framework. So this is kind of taking, this is like the base of what you saw up there is in terms of the conceptual rendering of what the vision is, what form that vision is going to take. And here's sort of that 2D image of, where things are going to go, where are the, in terms of improvements, where are the different land uses, what's going to change. You can see crosswalk improvements, you can see pedestrian and bike improvements, streetscape and needs, connectivity with bikes and trails, things of that nature. And this is really, what it was built upon, based on the recommendations that were identified. So again, that was the overview of this particular project. And, I don't want to, it's a rather lengthy project, so I'm not going to go page by page. We also did something very similar for the town of Paramore in Florida. Again, just setting the context, understanding why you're doing this. There was a healthy community design aspect to this, so understanding how people can move about and in a way that really addresses the health indicators that are lagging or problematic, that are specific to the community. And thinking about, again, the visioning and but what was unique about this particular project is that they thought about catalyst projects and they looked at the financial feasibility of those projects as well. So they went into a little bit of a deeper dive. As I said before, there's an issue of scale here, compared to the overall town-wide master plan. When diving into the downtown master plan, you get to be a little bit more specific. And as Phil mentioned, you get to develop, some concepts or develop those projects a little bit further than we were able to as part of the downtown. So, and that's exactly what this project did. And I don't have anything bookmarked here, but actually this might be, you could start to see how these things started to lay themselves out. Projects that were identified were rendered in programs like SketchUp. So if people can really see what that might look like, and people that are going to be, companies or organizations that may be interested in developing in the downtown area will see what the vision is and what the community wants to see as part of the redevelopment and the revitalization of downtown. The other plan that I wanted to showcase is was not created by VHB, but I wanted to include it because it does include a school property reuse analysis. So they evaluated the building, they got community feedback, they looked at reuse scenarios, and they thought about next steps. This particular project also did a zoning analysis, further zoning analysis to say, okay, well, not only what are the restrictions that may inhibit or challenge or serve as constraints to the revitalization of the area, but what have we already done with respect to zoning, and why is it not working as intended? So they created a smart growth zoning district in East Hampton, and it really was working for parts of the town, parts of the city, but it wasn't working for the downtown area, and they wanted to understand exactly why that was the case. So they did a deeper dive in terms of a zoning analysis for this particular plan, but everything else pretty much matches up with what would be typically included in a downtown plan. I do notice that there's not a lot of well, nope, I'm mistaken. Here's the market analysis and some of the inventory from a business perspective. And there is a shared parking analysis done as well. So you can start to see some of the similarities between these types of projects and these types of plans. The other plan that I wanted to show you, and just very quickly, because I think I said I only wanted to showcase 2 or 3, but this particular plan in Rockport was done, I think, by MAPC back in 2011. But I wanted to showcase it because it's more of the simpler project, simpler plan. It really just dives into that base planning process that I showcased earlier in the presentation. Really just looking at the vision, looking at the existing conditions, defining what you want the Rockport to, what you want the downtown to be, and then just developing some recommendations and an implementation plan for it. So not too much more than the base, but this, for example, doesn't include a market analysis. It doesn't look at the real estate inventory. It doesn't look at any particular projects that may be coming down the pipeline. It's just it's sort of a bare bones plan. And what we could do is share the PowerPoint presentation that I gave tonight, and I could share some of these examples with Ashley and with Rick for further review. But what we wanted to do, Rick and Ashley, is perhaps open up the conversation so that we can start take notes on what, again, might be what you might be thinking is relevant for the Northborough downtown plan. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yes, thank you so much. That was super helpful, and I will make sure to share all of that with everyone so you guys can really take a look at the various examples and get a sense of what could be included. But for now, to give Donnie and Phil a start on drafting the initial draft scope, we should just kind of provide comments and feedback on what we'd like to see in a downtown plan scope, and remembering that we're talking about the elements, the higher level elements, not implementation strategies right now. So
I would think that
yeah, go ahead, Rick.
right off the bat, most importantly would be, I'm not sure if this needs to be done prior to this going out to the consultants. It's done as part of the plan, but defining the actual study area. The Lebanon plan had a very clear map, an aerial view of, that part of the area that was going to be downtown, and a yellow line drawn around what the study area was going to be. So I would think that it'd be important to get that under control right off the bat. Whether that means that, our group here needs to make that decision in advance of the plan being done, or whether we just need to state, in the scope of work that's going to go out to the consultants, that one thing we need to do is to define, the area of study, and maybe mention that, Route 20 is kind of the main corridor through the town right now, but that presents a lot of issues as far as traffic and pedestrian safety and ability to locate businesses, and that most likely, the new downtown is going to have to include something more than just, Route 20 kind of thing. So there may have to be some sort of statement, at least from my point of view, expressing the fact that we're going to be talking about more than just the strip of Route 20. And I guess I'm making the assumption that we're going to be talking about some study area in that general vicinity, from just roughly someplace around where the existing town hall right now is, and maybe a little bit west of there, at least from where the library is, down to the common, maybe a little beyond there, I don't know, and then maybe heading north, from there, up through Blake Street and Church Street and Hudson Street towards Pierce. I'm not sure, but I mean, that's kind of a basic, maybe we need to test among ourselves, at least that much of an assumption. I've heard talk in the past from people about maybe we should just move the whole town center west down to past the southwest cutoff and take a look at all that area and do it all over again. I'm not sure how feasible that is, but I mean, if that's what we wanted to do, or if we wanted this study to at least evaluate more than one alternative to where the downtown could be, I imagine that would have to come out in the scope of services. So maybe I'd be interested in hearing some feedback about what people think about just the study area. And what
Amy?
feedback-
Amy has her hand raised.
I do have a document I could share. Being on the planning board, I have a couple plans. You probably have them too, Rick. There was a Northborough downtown project in 2000 where the Conway School mapped out a downtown. But I also have the other plans from the zoning where downtown business, it runs from, is it called the Coleman House? It's a nursing home there, and it goes down through Main Street Residential, like you were talking about, and ends at like Stone's Motorcycle Shop. But then you could also include the downtown neighborhood, like you talked about, which was Blake Street and Hudson Street. And then the downtown project from 2000 had it going over to like Assabet Park. So it included Assabet Park. But it's already drawn up on a map, and I could share that for the next meeting if people wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, Donnie, if you feel like, is that something that would save us money or time if we were able to just kind of knock that out before putting out the draft scope? Like, this is the area, or should that really be something done as part of the downtown
And
plan?
I would suggest having it done as part of the downtown plan, only because you want to make sure that what was written on paper, years ago is still relevant in terms of, property ownership. Has things significantly changed in terms of, who owns the property and what the viability of, change would be for those properties that would maybe incorporated into that study area, but really wouldn't serve the purpose of what you're looking to do in terms of revitalization. And that's a shorter term, or potentially a shorter term issue. So, but what I'm driving at is that there's probably an evaluation process that needs to that needs to be undertaken to confirm the study area, if that makes sense.
Okay, and those additional studies that you were talking about, is that something that would happen right at the outset of a plan? And then everything else could be determined from those?
Yeah, it depends. The branding guidelines for example, may not start at the onset of a plan, because it wouldn't be, one of those things that has a that is a dependency, I should say. But if you're going to do a parking analysis, that you would probably want market analysis. Most certainly would have to get going, at the onset of the project, to really understand what the opportunities are, because those projects that serve as dependencies, then they would get going, but others may not.
I think,
And related to establishing the study area, it's certainly not unusual actually in others for an RFP when it's sent out to consultants to define the actual study area. It's not always the case, but that's certainly not unusual. So there could be some advantages to, having the committee kind of finalize what could be preliminarily, what the study area is. But I think in the RFP, you want to suggest to consultants that, that there's some openness to expanding upon it. But,
I like that idea.
Yeah.
So that they have a sense of what they're working with, but we
yeah,
need to
that's
confirm it.
important. When consultants are developing a scope, that's important.
I think one of the, rather than come up with the solution, which is finding the area, I think it's best if we just determine all our goals, what we want to do, and then you see where it fits best. Because I wrote an article on this called Ready, Fire, Aim. So if we pick the site and it's not solving the problems we want to solve, define our goals and then see where that best fits. And it's usually the best way of approaching it. Get our 3 or 4 primary goals that we want to accomplish. And if it's the congestion of Route 20, then maybe the center of town moves. But if that's not the goal, let's not pick a perimeter and then see if we can stuff everything into it. Let's define the stuff we want to put in it first. And then when we understand what we really want to do as a community, then we see where it fits best. Because we might pick a spot and then all the goals we're trying to accomplish don't work because we picked the wrong spot. The spot should be a result of our biggest goals. And once those are established, the spot may pick itself.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
That's a good point.
we can go through the master plan and kind of pull out all the items that have to do with downtown and what we had hoped to see. And I think we should do that and send those over to Donnie and make sure that those are included in the scope. But beyond, I mean, I don't have those in front of me at the moment, but for discussion purposes tonight, I think it makes sense to kind of just hear what everyone feels are the high level issues that this downtown plan should be addressing.
Ashley, I think you touched upon it, that a lot of the public engagement from the master plan focused on what they want to, what the community wants to see as part of a downtown. So you could start fleshing out those goals, and then you can get into the evaluation process, as I mentioned earlier, for that site as part of the downtown plan. But so I mean, either way, you have a leg up in terms of, because the master plan is so recent, on what on that particular task.
That was another comment I had. The last plan that you showed, I feel like we're beyond that, because what we did with the, although it was a town-wide master plan, there was so much focus on downtown that we've got that preliminary kind of visioning work. We've got those things kind of laid out, and now the more technical studies, I think, would be really helpful. That's my opinion. And I think a lot of the ones that you listed would be really helpful to include in this downtown plan.
I agree. I liked all the plans, but is there a price tag that goes along with each one of them?
I'm sure.
Sure. Yes. So something like the Rockport plan, you might expect like a, I don't know, like a $60,000 to $80,000 effort. Please don't quote me, but it's a lighter lift. And something like the Lebanon plan, that was more like a $300,000 plan. But like I said earlier in the meeting, that also included the tunnel assessment and the engineering report for that tunnel, and all of the conceptual design for the tunnel, and multiple alternatives for that tunnel. So that was I hesitate to even quote that number, because it's not something that would be in the realm of what you're looking at. But what I could look back on what the Paramore project ended up costing, but and I can get that number to you. But between it's somewhere in between the two, and probably on the lower end, not so much high, not as close to the $300,000. Certainly in the $100,000, I think, area.
I think if the visual aids have something to do with the cost of the plan,
It does.
I think we need to at least include the fact that, I think very helpful, like we saw in the Lebanon plan, having some sort of a visual view of what the plan is proposing to do, kind of once we have a study area defined, and what we want to do within the study area in terms of the different components of it, that more than just words, and probably more than just some pictures, that there is some sort of a map that kind of shows, if this is all done to its fullest extent, what the new area would look like, or what would be positioned where, what services would be provided, how it would work. So I think we want to specify in the RFP that we expect something like that to be done.
So, Rick, were you talking about the drawing and the concept development and the renderings, or were you talking about more of
The aerial.
this image here and something like this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that aerial.
That aerial, sort of, there was in the Lebanon plan, there was first just a picture of the existing area with the study line drawn around it, and then there was this, at the end of the plan that said, this is what's going to fit into the study area, and everything's going to get done over time. And the color coding to indicate what all the different aspects of it were.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think too, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, this is less costly than this to do in multiple iterations for multiple different concepts.
Yeah, I think the map is more helpful to me, but I think too, in addition, that at the end of this, it would be really helpful, and John Kadir can chime in on this, but I think it would be really helpful to have the financial feasibility study, and I'm sure that costs additional, but to know what of these projects we can do, when, how to budget for them, how far ahead. I think that's key, because we can have all these visions, but if we don't have a realistic plan of achieving them and know that they're possible, then it will go nowhere.
Yeah, if I can add to that, Ashley, if I may? So I'm not sure how many of you are aware of this, but in 2013, we did I wouldn't say it was a downtown master plan by any stretch, but there was a review of a lot of the things that we discussed here tonight. And we did do a $4.5 million traffic improvement plan in the downtown, adding turning lanes. But before we got there, working with the designers, we did a lot of engineering studies to look at moving kind of the roads, like literally, we looked at trying to line up Church Street with Monroe, or acquiring property and changing the whole intersections. And I think we should look at everything. And I don't want anybody to take this in any other way. That we'll look at everything. But as we start looking at that, it's a state road, it's private property. So you're getting into, land takings, acquisitions. So it gets complicated very quickly. But we did look at that. We looked at rotaries. We looked at all sorts of stuff. And in that project, where the state was really the one footing the bill, we had to put our, ring them and put their arms behind their back, and to get them to give us, the red walkways and things like that we were looking for. But one of the things that I'm struggling, I always struggle with when I look at our downtown. I think a couple meetings ago, there was a comment. Everybody always says, why can't we look like Hudson or Marlborough? And I say, if we had the basic infrastructure that they have, the streetscape that they have, and the revitalization is just getting tenants to come in and making it look nice, I think our lift is a lot heavier, being a state road. The fact that we don't have that streetscape, we don't have a spur off of Route 20 that is the downtown, like is Marlborough's case. But but we did look at that, not in the depth that I hope we're going to look at it this cycle through, but trying to figure out, you're going to be limited, what you can do on Route 20 for a variety of reasons, and the idea of looking at where are we going to potentially focus. It's going to be, I think we're going to need, not that I'm arguing for spending more money. That's a rarity you'll see from me. But I think, we want to make sure that we're going to get the vision that we want out of this to plan moving forward. The other thing I would say is, not everything is just one bite at the apple. Any real project of any duration and complexity is likely going to require, a couple of bites, and a couple, just like you have the master plan, then you're taking another bite about just a downtown. We may need to look at just a area specific within the downtown to focus on first. I don't know what it's going to look like. But, the challenge, I've talked to a lot of folks, the challenge for us, and I'd be interested to hear what Donnie's thoughts are on this, is, Route 20 is our downtown right now. And we don't have that quaint New England downtown streetscape that they had to start with in Hudson and Marlborough. And I think that's a bigger gap for us to close. And I'm curious how we're going to close that gap, I guess.
Yeah, John, I think, what we've been talking about and what we talked about during the master plan is, how do we expand that downtown and reimagine it from the perspective of, okay, we're not talking about Route 20. We're not talking about the facades along Route 20. We're making, to make it viable, to make it, focused on, driving activity, thinking of, recreating sort of that New England street feel if it doesn't exist. There's the move toward, those lifestyle centers. There's a move toward, experiences from a retail, perspective. Where in the town can the downtown move? Is it more reasonable to shift it up, like Rick was talking about, along Blake Street and moving it toward Hudson Street, and incorporating the town common and making that? I mean, you look at the Lebanon plan, that downtown plan. I mean, that downtown area was not that small. I mean, it's quite a big area that they were focusing on. And you think about the town common being so far away from the new old town hall, if I got that right, then it's not really that far. If you think about it from this perspective, and like that creating that that larger study area. So how do you maximize it while mitigating the constraints that Route 20 provide to you, that present to you? And that's the, you know, the safety aspects, the volume, the noise, the air, potential air quality. How do you mitigate that while trying to, you know, reimagine the area and thinking about different areas within the area that can be utilized and connected, and, you know, help to create that sense of place, that sense of place that people are looking for when they think about Hudson and they think about Marlborough, although slightly different communities.
Well, I think this document is going to be honest about that. I mean, I think it's got to state that, you know, the town has got a real desire to do something about a revitalization and improvement and the beautification of its downtown. It faces this major issue with US 20 going through the middle of it. And this plan needs to address alternatives for how to get to what the people in the town want to see, taking into account that Route 20 has got to be considered as either some great innovation or a limiting factor. But just like you said, there was another plan where you said there were some zoning districts which were working in certain areas of the town, but not in the downtown. And part of the downtown plan was to address why not.
Mm-hmm.
It stated there was a problem that had to be solved. And I think that anything that we send out for people to respond back to should state the fact that for years we struggled with this issue about US 20 sort of forming what's right now the kind of the center of our town. And the town is looking for improvement and a different vision. And, you know, this plan has got to address how to do that without maybe getting into sort of specifying exactly how that happens, but just to say that, you know, your job, if you choose to accept it, is to work with us to define, you know, a plan that meets these goals, taking into account that Route 20 is going to be still running through the center of Northborough.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of comments too, and I'm just wondering, I know Hudson, right, they started off with a streetscape, but they've been a boom and bust town for a while, and now it's kind of seeming like they're doing well. But there is a state road running right through their downtown, 62 or 27, or I think it changes somewhere. But so I just wonder how they dealt with it, and maybe we can ask. But the other thing I wanted to note is that I think we have a leg up in one way, and that the town does own a lot of property downtown. So Blake Street, a lot of the parking area across from the fire station, there's the fire station, there's the old town hall. And then there are a couple of vacant commercial buildings that there's possibilities. So I think there's a lot of potential. And the fact that the town owns a lot of there, I think allows some easier projects potentially, you know, to come out of this. But
Yeah, and that was I referenced that in the municipal property inventory and what you might want to do with those properties. But, you know, as we discussed, there's a lot of property along that Blake Street area, and that's where you hold some of the Apple Fest events as well, I think. So it's already a place of gathering. So it sort of, from a historical standpoint, makes a little bit of sense. But again, I mean, to Dario's point earlier, you know, you want to have these conversations as part of that plan, and you know, try to solidify what you want. Does it make sense to have a big, you know, study area? Does it make sense to be a little bit smaller? You know, city of Burlington has that, and Hanover, New Hampshire has very small, you know, downtowns. If you think about it, you know, they're quite focused. You know, I think those towns are also looking to think about how to expand those downtowns. But this is Northborough. This is not, you know, Burlington, Vermont. So, you know, it's a different community, and you have different goals, and you have different constraints and challenges, and different, you know, altogether. So.
yeah, Amy, you had your hand raised. Did you want to say anything?
Oh, I was just thinking, from the people I talked to, even ideas like Julianne had about the lampposts and like planters in front of stores, like a lot of simple things to start with would go a long way. to the downtown.
Oh, I had one other comment too, and I agree with Amy. I think the streetscape is going to be something we do want to see, even though it's going to be difficult with Route 20. But when we're going to put out this scope or the request for proposals on this scope, can we say, you know, we've already had this traffic study done, we've worked with Mass DOT, you know, just kind of list all of the work that's already been done and can be provided
Yes,
to the
that's
consultant.
that is frequently done. Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
we would always reference prior work and studies that were done.
Okay. I know Amy mentioned the streetscape, but I think it would be good if everyone can kind of give their input on the sort of high level pieces they'd like to see. Obviously, traffic congestion is something that needs to be addressed, but maybe we've done everything we can there, as John said. But what other items might be of most importance? And I think Julianne, you had something you wanted to say. You're on mute right now.
Thank you. I just want to say I completely agree with your point, Ashley, where you identified that Route 62 runs through the center of Hudson, and it'd be interesting to talk to them to see how they accommodated the traffic. And, you know, we hear a lot about, oh my gosh, Route 20 runs through town, but there must be some positives about, you know, a major road running through your town. And some of that might be, you know, as people are on their way to Wegmans or wherever they're going, they look at your downtown and say, oh, you know, I might like to stop at the pizza shop, or I should go into town hall and do my business. You know, I can only imagine some positives about more trafficked road that goes to the center of your town. And I just want to point out that the center of Shrewsbury also has 140 and that very busy Main Street. It's a very busy intersection there, yet it feels different. I don't know whether it's the trees or the, you know, the big green space or the wide sidewalks, but you know, they have a similar situation too. So I guess my point is, let's not bemoan Route 20 too much and look for the positives.
Yeah, I want Millie, I know you have your hand up. I just wanted to quickly say too that I feel like parking has always been an issue. So that will really have to be a part of the scope, is addressing parking. But I think we do have a lot of parking currently, but whether people know that it's public parking is another question. And maybe so signage, wayfinding, parking, I think those are things that really probably need to go into it. So Millie.
Yeah, I was basically just going to mention something about parking as well. And I was curious, John, whether that 2013 study might be worthwhile for us to just take a look at again, so that we're not making some of the same mistakes, or where you felt that maybe that wasn't successful and parts of it that were.
Yeah, you know, again, I don't want to be beholden to something that we've done. If you have information, I think it's important that the consultants have it. But really, I think what we're trying to accomplish here is a bigger step back and a broader view about what can be done. But yeah, we can provide that information. You know, just again, we looked at some of that, but not everything that we talked about. And we certainly didn't look at, you know, one of the big things is, you know, is just the aesthetic look and the feel of the downtown, which has been mentioned. And you know, you don't necessarily have to move the downtown to make it prettier. You know, so when we talk about revitalization of the downtown, I mean, you know, we kind of need to get a handle on, or agreement on, like, what does that mean? Because you can just beautify kind of what you have, or are we talking about like demolishing and acquiring and demolishing whole blocks of existing buildings and redeveloping them? You know, like there's all sorts of ranges of what you can do here. So I think, you know, like we're all doing, I always like to, everybody wants to jump into, let's like talk about, you know, start getting into the substantive piece of it. I really would just come back, and I'm going to dump it on Donnie right here, is we need a scope of services that we need you as the expert, in my opinion, to frame the issue up and give us a scope of services, then that we can, as a group, kick around and tweak and modify. If left to us to just come up with it, these will be some long meetings and might lack a little bit of focus, in my opinion. You know, I would like to have something to work off of.
Yeah, I think Donnie was looking for some initial feedback tonight, then
Yeah.
create a draft scope that we can work with, right? I think that was
Yes, I
my
just need the high
understanding.
level. I mean, this conversation is good, but I need the high level of, you know, what are the asks and what are the wants, so we could pull together a scope of work that
Want
might
it to
work
be
for you.
gorgeous.
Yeah,
Now
exactly.
go.
I see
Oh, no.
Jean's hand up. I just wanted to make one comment on Tracy too, that I think a market analysis would be really helpful as well, because there are, you know, a few buildings downtown that are vacant or have changed hands a number of times. And why is that? You know, and how can we make sure that doesn't happen again? Like I said, Hudson was a boom and bust town for a long time, and now they seem to have some staying power, and I wonder what, you know, what changed there that, you know, they were able to make that happen. So Jean and then Tracy.
Oh,
So I
Fran.
think in addition to town beauty, we really want to focus on town function. And our downtown has such wonky entrances and exits to all the different businesses that you'd rather go to the edge of town to shop. It's hard and you don't want to walk around our downtown because you're crisscrossing dangerous roads and it's loud and it's just unpleasant. It's actually unpleasant to be downtown. So one idea, I think, you know, high level would be to, instead of focusing on Route 20, bring our attention to the back streets of Blake Street, Church, Monroe, as the place that could be really nice to walk around and we could kind of face our businesses toward those walkable streets and kind of consider our downtown district as in a different way, you know, getting people off Route 20, but giving them the satisfaction and the fun and the, you know, just the exercise and all the good things that a town like Marlborough and Hudson bring, is like the experience of being there, the proximity to the rail trail. And those businesses also have kind of a back front onto the side street behind Main Street in Hudson. We have walkways. We could, you know, we want a walkable downtown. We could be interconnecting in all different ways through off of Route 20, but like behind businesses, behind Davidia Bank, around the new fire station, back across, you know, back to the river, you know, and start to think about like our assets. Another thing is we have Assabet Hill, that Assabet Park, which is beautiful. Has anyone ever stepped foot on that park? I know I never have.
I have.
It's like a jewel
Only
that
during COVID though.
Kids.
it's completely unfunctional. So like, let's think about function. Let's think about the neighborhoods and people wanting to live close to that walkable downtown, people wanting to park their car in some municipal lot of interconnected asphalt that's not all chopped up by fences that prevent us from even being able to get around.
And I think, Jean, you've hit it on the nail. I think you summarized the feeling that came out of a lot of the public input into the master plan before we started. People said exactly what you just said. And so anything we can do to make that possible I think is what we need to do somehow. And I think the study has to give us ideas about how to do that.
Tracy had her hand up, and Fran, sorry, I didn't realize you had your
Yeah,
hand
I
up.
was actually going to go right down that same exact trail. I think having a healthy community design would be really important, because I'm hearing just young families and people that have been here 20, 25 years want to be able to access it very differently, walking, biking. I do have a question about aesthetics, if this has been a part of any of the past studies. Burying the power lines and not having them visible I don't know if that's a hot topic or.
I think
what, but I would be interested.
John touched on it before you came onto the meeting.
Okay.
That's what, just saying that it's a really high cost.
I knew that. I knew that.
I did it.
But
I
that
did
does
it.
a lot for the looks of the town. It makes
It does,
a huge
absolutely.
difference.
And we should look at it. I did it when
Good.
I worked in the town of Chelmsford. We suppressed all the utilities in a very limited footprint in the downtown. And this is going back 20 years ago. And I want to say it was about $5 or $6 million. And it depends on how I don't want to, it's usually done, or oftentimes done, through an assessment of the properties that benefit, and those owners sometimes are in favor or not in favor of it. But we should look at everything at this point. I wouldn't
like
want
to
on the
see
front
that
end
in the
I wouldn't on the front end want to rule anything out. And then through a process, you know, like anything, we're going to have to make decisions and trade-offs about, you know, what we want to see and what we have for resources and what's the sweet spot for our specific instance. But I wouldn't rule anything out of the gate. I think you need to look at everything
think it'd be good
and
to
just
look at
funnel
that.
it down.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Fran, you've had your hand up for a while.
It's okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, I just wanted to actually, I think that Jean said it really very well. I was going to just agree with what Julianne said. I mean, Route 20 is Route 20, and we should figure out a way in which we can benefit from it, not just think of it as the ugly stepchild all the time. Because I think we can compare ourselves more closely to Shrewsbury that doesn't really have much of a downtown, but they do. But it has to do with the buildings on the sidewalk, which we really tried doing in our zoning. And I do think that parking is important for people to be able to drive down there, but you have to allow for mixed use and dense development of residential, because if the people aren't there, they're not going to go to the places. And that's why Hudson is thriving. They have so much multi-unit housing now within the walking distance. I mean, that's not the only reason. But we do have to look at parking, walkability, and then the marketing piece that Donnie said initially. Who wants to be there? What do we want to bring down there? And then look at our zoning, because we have a lot of residential that doesn't allow any type of business or uses that we're trying to bring into that downtown area to make it vibrant.
Thanks, Fran. I had forgotten, I wanted to mention that as well, that the infill of more dense housing downtown would be really important, and that should be something that we look at in terms of the scope. I've heard from a lot of folks selling their houses in Northborough that they're retiring to Hudson for that very reason. So, Dario?
Yeah, so I think this is good because I think we're hearing the problems and we're hearing the opportunities. We have a lot of opportunities here. And the first thing, there is no such thing as a downtown that didn't have a major road or a crossroad, or it wouldn't be there. They don't exist just in the middle of nowhere. So as a fundamental statement, Route 20 goes right through the center of Marlborough. They put a bypass, but that was Route 20. And a common thing that we don't have, there's a negative and an opportunity. Having gas stations and things don't add a lot to a downtown, you know, the Cumberland Farms and things like that, because you're walking in front of gas pumps before you get to the, you know, the actual food or any type of service. And you'll find out that the multi-use living and retail is awesome because you can work upstairs and cook down or serve down. And if you look at any of the wonderful downtowns, you know, and I'm not even necessarily going to say Marlborough or Hudson, they all have street parking. You pull it right off the street and you park. So does Beacon Hill, so does the North End, so does Concord. Any one of those downtowns that are vibrant have parking that's readily accessible, but they also slow down the traffic. It's called bulbing the corners, where you have to make sharp turns very slowly so that the traffic is slowed down so it becomes a people-friendly town. And that's in a master plan. And I know these guys can do this in a heartbeat because they know exactly what that takes. They need our support and direction to get it. But every one of those towns has the on-street parking. Marlborough, you pull in, you go to the bank for 10 minutes, you leave. Hudson, you can pull in a parking space on the street, you go to the bank. If you're going to be there long-term, you go behind the buildings and park. But that's the same thing with the North End. It's the same thing with any town anywhere from here to Portland, Oregon. You can park on the streets where you want to be. And when you make those streets more user-friendly, the traffic by default slows down. The big negative that we have, the last thing, and it's a tough one to solve because I've looked at it forever, is we don't have a logical intersection. Our streets come in all cattywampus. And that makes it really difficult for traffic because you got to stop 6 times before you go through the stupid town. It drives people insane, whether it's a timing thing. I don't know the answer to that. I've been sitting here, you know, grappling with it. I'm sure VHB sitting there going, oh, I don't want to solve this one either, because that one's a pain when you
Well-
have 3 or 4 major arteries hitting in a bunch of different directions. And then at those intersections, there's a bunch of gas stations. That's hard to pick that up. So, that's some of the stuff that, to make it beautiful, we can't throw out the gas stations, but none of these towns have the gas stations in the center of town either. If you look at any of those, you won't see it in Marlborough, you won't see it in Hudson, you won't see it in Beacon Hill, you won't see it in Shrewsbury or Hudson. And then nobody has those types of facilities in the heart of their town.
Agreed. And so somehow that has to be taken into consideration in the plan and worked around.
Exactly. And I think if we put those goals in VHB's lap, they can start laying stuff out and say, guys, here's what you're going to have to do if you want to be like any of 50 towns, because they all have that kind of common thread, which we're hurting, and I'm sure VHB isn't looking at this. No, it's a piece of cake. We'll put a couple of lanterns, 3 benches, put some brick pavers, and we're out of here. This one's a tough one.
Yep.
So on that note, I see you, Jean Kennedy, with your hand up. We do have about 2 minutes left till the proposed end of the meeting. I just wanted to get a sense of whether, Donnie, you feel like you have enough to do the initial draft scope, and then we'll take Jean's comment. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Jean.
Well, just quickly, in the interest of providing a little more input for Donnie, when he mentioned the number $60,000 to $80,000, that sounded about right to me. Secondly, we have the major Route 20 improvement that occurred a few years ago, so we have to work with that. I think the reality is we happen to have a highway business district that is in the middle of our community. It's not the other way around. We're not Hudson and we're not Marlborough for obvious reasons. So the plan needs to address how we downtownize our little segment. And that includes some of the things that people said here, including going north and south of Route 20, capture the natural features, the stream, the historic district, the historic properties, et cetera. And my third comment would be, vision is nice, goals are nice. This committee is set up on a monthly basis to talk about goals, but we need some very specific recommendations in a targeted downtown plan that address things like zoning issues that are preventing some of these vacant properties from being developed, zoning incentives that can encourage multiple properties to be combined in a way that meets our vision and our goal, and give the planning board some very specific direction where they can go to town meeting and proceed with some specific improvements.
Thanks, Jean. That was very helpful.
I can say the gas stations are prohibited in the downtown as of 2014.
All right, well, we've come to 8 o'clock, and unless anybody else has additional comments to provide to Donnie and Phil, Julianne has one more comment.
So I have just heard this word mentioned in the context of a lot of other things, but I don't know how everybody feels about this, but I think the river is a huge asset that we could capitalize on. And if that could be, I'd like to hear from other people if they agree or disagree, but maybe that should be highly incorporated into the plan.
Yeah, I didn't want to get into any implementation, but I agree. And I think if we were to move north, it would be so wonderful to incorporate the aqueduct bridge with some sort of walkway down to the sidewalk to connect down to a downtown. I mean, what a beautiful, streetscape. But
I agree.
That's it. All right.
Yep.
Well, unless there are any other comments, can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? No. All right. Roll call vote. Amy Pretsky,
Aye.
Rick,
All right.
Julianne,
Aye.
Millie,
Aye.
Jean Kennedy,
Aye.
Adrian,
Aye.
Dario,
Aye.
Jean Cahill,
Hi.
Tracy,
Aye.
Fran,
Go Patriots.
and John Campbell.
Aye.
All right. Well, thank you all. And thank you, Donnie and Phil, for meeting with us. And hopefully you got what you needed.
Thank
All right,
you.
great. Thank you.
One last note, the next meeting, we go back to 7 o'clock.